Some of the biggest records of the past decade carry his fingerprints all over them, and the empire connected to his name is reportedly worth millions, leaving the music world wondering what kind of legacy and inheritance could eventually be passed down to his family. You already know the signature tag. You've heard it hit seconds before the bass shakes the entire track. But beyond hits like Sicko Mode, Look Alive, and Non-Stop, Tay Keith was quietly putting together something far larger than most people ever realized. We're talking about a catalog valued in the millions, a publishing partnership with one of the most powerful companies in music, his own music collective operating under his brand, and reported investments stretching into real estate and other business ventures. Most fans recognized the sound instantly. Very few understood the wealth, ownership, and long-term legacy that kept growing behind the scenes every single time one of those records was streamed, played, or performed anywhere in the world. And trust me, what he actually built and what that foundation could mean for the people closest to him is a much bigger story than many of the headlines are letting on. Yo, what's good, everybody? Today we're taking a deep dive into the Tay Keith estate. We're breaking down what his true net worth may have looked like, the assets connected to his name, how elite producers create wealth that keeps generating income for years, and what his loved ones could potentially inherit moving forward. And believe me, by the end of this video, you'll realize the biggest story isn't just the music itself. It's what those records were quietly becoming in the background while millions of listeners were simply enjoying the hits. So lock in, let's talk about it. Before we go any further though, we have to acknowledge the serious part of this story. Brevavius Lakeith Chambers, better known to the world as Tay Keith, reportedly passed away on June 18, 2026. He was found inside his Nashville apartment at only 29 years old. According to Metro Nashville Police, there were no immediate signs of foul play, and as things currently stand, the case remains unclassified while authorities wait for the final autopsy results. That's the part that really hits hard. Here was a young creator operating at the highest level of his career, with so much more music left to make, and his story was cut short far too early. The shockwaves have been felt across the entire industry because this wasn't a retired legend looking back on past accomplishments. This was a producer still dominating, still influencing major records, and still pushing his career to new heights. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. When someone builds an empire like Tay Keith did, the business doesn't simply disappear when they're gone. The catalog continues generating streams, the royalty checks continue arriving, the ownership remains attached to the assets he spent years creating. And that's what separates this from a typical tribute story, because everything he built is still active, still producing income, still carrying value, and now those assets are tied to the people he chose to leave them to. So let's go all the way back to the beginning and see how a kid from South Memphis ended up creating an estate that everyone is now trying to calculate. The story starts in South Memphis. Born on September 20, 1996, Tay Keith was the youngest of 5 children, growing up with 2 brothers and 2 sisters. He wasn't raised inside the music industry, surrounded by executives, or connected to powerful people in entertainment. His mother earned her GED before attending cosmetology school. His father worked as a locksmith, and both parents represented hard-working people who believed education was the safest and most reliable road to
success. And this next detail tells you a lot about where his musical instincts first developed. His early connection to music came from spending time around his father, who had ties to DJ culture, along with siblings and neighborhood influences that helped spark his interest during weekend visits. That's where the foundation was laid. No major studio waiting for him, no industry relatives opening doors. Just a kid from Memphis who discovered something he loved and chased it with everything he had. And to really understand this journey, you have to understand Memphis itself, because the city is much more than just the setting. Memphis has long been one of the most influential music cities in America. It's a place where struggle, passion, and raw emotion have always been woven directly into the culture. Growing up in that environment and being surrounded by Southern rap's legacy gave Tay Keith something that can't be taught through books or classes. The aggression in his drums, the darkness in his bass lines, and the tension that lived inside his production all carried traces of where he came from. That's Memphis. He transformed the energy of his hometown into a sound that resonated with listeners around the world. And that authenticity is exactly why people connected with it. He wasn't chasing trends from Atlanta, New York, or Los Angeles. He was bringing a sound that felt completely original, completely personal, and completely rooted in Memphis. And eventually, the industry started coming to him. That's a rare position to reach, because when your sound is truly unique, you're no longer competing with everyone else. You're offering something nobody else can replicate. That exclusivity became part of his value. And value is the foundation of every lasting estate.
He started producing beats when he was only 14 years old. Just think about that for a second. 14. He taught himself the software from the ground up. No industry veteran sitting beside him, no producer with plaques on the wall guiding every step. It was just him, a computer screen, and an obsession with figuring things out, no matter how long it took. And this is the part of the story a lot of people overlook. While so many kids around him dreamed of becoming rappers, wanted the spotlight, the fame, the jewelry, and the attention that came with it, Tay Keith chose a completely different lane. He stayed behind the boards. He became fascinated with how music was actually built, the science behind the sound, the arrangement, the engineering, and the way one drum pattern could completely transform the energy of a room. That's a different mindset altogether. That's the mentality of a creator and an owner rather than a performer. And honestly, it explains a lot about why his financial legacy eventually looked the way it did. Builders create assets, and assets keep generating value long after the applause fades away. He spent years uploading beats to YouTube and DatPiff, constantly putting his work out into the world and waiting to see who would notice. That's the unglamorous stage nobody talks about. No major audience, no celebrity endorsements, no algorithm suddenly making life easier, just countless hours of repetition, practice, and improvement, refining a skill that might not pay off for years, if it paid off at all. Most people quit during that stage. Most people need immediate proof that they're on the right path, and when that proof doesn't come, they walk away. Tay Keith didn't. He kept producing, kept learning, and kept improving, one beat at a time. He was laying bricks in silence while nobody was paying attention. And that same discipline, that ability to stay committed without guarantees, would later show up in the way he approached ownership, business, and long-term wealth. Then came the relationship that changed everything. He connected with fellow Memphis artist Blockboy JB, and right away there was a chemistry between them that couldn't be ignored. Two hungry young talents from the same city, carrying similar experiences and chasing the same dream, started building together. As they worked, you could hear something unique beginning to take shape, a sound that belonged to them. By 2015, Tay Keith was already landing placements, contributing production to projects like
Black Youngsta's Mixtape. He was also collaborating with Moneybagg Yo, another major name from Memphis. Credit by credit, connection by connection, he was building a foundation that most outsiders couldn't fully appreciate yet. And he was doing all of it while attending college. Because education had always been emphasized in his household, Tay enrolled at Middle Tennessee State University, studying media management, while balancing coursework and music production. He wasn't ready to abandon either path until life made the decision for him. He graduated on December 15, 2018, a first-generation college graduate. Later, he admitted that school consumed a lot of his time and sometimes slowed down the pace he wanted to move at in music. But he finished what he started. He earned that degree. And this is where things get interesting. He wasn't just studying random subjects, he was studying media management. That means he wasn't only learning how to create music, he was learning how the business side worked, how deals were structured, and how ownership could shape a career. Those lessons would eventually show up in many of the decisions he made later, and it's a major reason why this story became one about legacy and assets rather than simply a collection of hit songs. But here's where everything changes, because 2018 wasn't only the year he graduated from college, it was the year the entire music industry, and eventually the world, learned the name Tay Keith. Whether people realized it at the time or not, the momentum started with Rover by Blockboy JB, a song that was already gaining serious traction. Then February arrived and everything exploded. Blockboy released Look Alive featuring Drake, produced by Tay Keith, and the record took off like a rocket. It climbed all the way to number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. Think about that for a second. Drake, the biggest artist on the planet at the time, was rapping over a beat created by a producer from South Memphis who had been uploading music online only a few years earlier. And suddenly, that now famous producer tag was ringing out on radio stations across the country. That was the breakthrough moment. And once that door opened, Tay Keith didn't just walk through it, he blew it wide open. Now, let's slow things down and really look at why these records matter, because each one played a role in building the catalog and estate we're discussing today. Look Alive was the launch pad. Before that record, Tay Keith was viewed as a talented regional producer with potential. After it, he became somebody Drake wanted to work with. That's the kind of leap that can redefine an entire career. It proved that his Memphis-inspired sound could dominate the mainstream, and suddenly every major artist, executive, and A&R knew exactly who he was. One record completely changed the possibilities in front of him. Then came Non-Stop from Drake's Scorpion album, another massive success that reached number 2 on the Hot 100 and seemed impossible to escape throughout that summer. Landing a placement on a Drake album isn't just another credit, it's confirmation that you've arrived. Scorpion was one of the biggest albums in the world, generating billions of streams, and every stream contributes value to the creators involved. That's the type of placement that quietly generates income year after year without most people ever noticing. Then came the song that elevated him into another category entirely. Travis Scott's Sicko Mode wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural phenomenon. The track reached number 1, spent more than 30 weeks inside Billboard's top 10, earned Diamond certification, generated billions of streams, and secured Tay Keith his first Grammy nomination. Think about the significance of that. Your name becomes attached to a song that defines an era, a song that still gets played in arenas, clubs, playlists, and cars years after release. A Diamond certification represents 10 million units sold, and that's before even considering the streaming numbers. Songs like Sicko Mode don't stop creating value after the charts move on. They become long-term assets, the kind of assets that can generate revenue for decades and strengthen a catalog for an entire
Lifetime. That one record completely changed the financial equation of his career. And in that same incredible run, he also produced Not Alike for Eminem's Kamikaze album. Take a moment and think about what that says regarding his versatility. Think about the level he reached in such a short period of time. He went from working with Drake to collaborating with Travis Scott, and then landing production credits with Eminem. 3 of the biggest names in hip-hop, each operating in completely different lanes, all putting their trust in the same young producer from Memphis within a remarkably short span. During that same run, he was also attached to a platinum record with 6ix9ine. The placements were coming so fast that keeping track of them became almost impossible, and every major credit added another layer to the empire he was quietly building. But the momentum didn't stop there. If anything, it only accelerated. And this is where the bigger picture starts to come into focus when discussing his long-term value. Tay Keith went on to produce Before I Let Go for Beyoncé's Homecoming project. And anyone who understands the music business knows that earning a Beyoncé placement puts you in an entirely different category, because she's famously selective about who gets access to her world. A credit like that becomes more than a song, it becomes a credential. He also expanded one of his early successes through the Rover 2.0 remix alongside 21 Savage, helping push that record to an even larger audience. Then years later, he played a role in launching the rise of Sexy Red through her breakout hit Pound Town, proving he wasn't just benefiting from an old wave of success, he was helping create the next one. That's a detail many people overlook when evaluating a producer's real worth. Plenty of producers catch one hot streak and disappear when the sound changes. Their catalog becomes trapped in a specific era and slowly fades from relevance. Tay Keith avoided that trap. He adapted, evolved, and remained important across multiple generations of rap music. That means his catalog isn't tied to one particular moment in history. It stretches across different eras, different audiences, and different movements within the culture. And that kind of range makes a catalog stronger, more durable, and ultimately more valuable, because new listeners keep discovering it instead of moving past it. When you add everything together, the numbers become impressive. Tay Keith accumulated 11 top 10 hits on the Billboard Hot 100 and 6 #1 songs on the Hot R&B Hip-Hop Songs chart during the decade. That's an extraordinary run by any standard. He was also named to Forbes 30 Under 30 Music list in 2025 and earned BMI Producer of the Year honors 3 separate times. And these accomplishments aren't just trophies sitting on a shelf collecting dust. They strengthened his reputation, increased his leverage, attracted bigger opportunities, and helped push his earning power higher year after year. In the music business, your track record becomes your bargaining power, and his resume spoke for itself.
But here's the key mindset shift that helps explain this entire story. Every one of those records wasn't simply a hit song. Each one was an asset, a piece of intellectual property capable of generating revenue long after its release. Most traditional jobs work one way. You perform the work, collect the paycheck, and move on. Hit records work differently. You create them once, and they can continue paying for years, decades, and sometimes generations. Throughout the late 2010s and into the 2020s, Tay Keith was building a portfolio of those assets, one placement at a time. Every song became another stream of income designed to keep working long into the future. So let's talk about the estate itself. What was Tay Keith actually worth, and what made up that value? Various reports have placed his net worth somewhere between $2 million and $5 million, while some estimates from 2024 suggested numbers approaching $10 million, depending on how his catalog and publishing interests were valued. And that gap tells an important story on its own. The reason estimates vary so dramatically is because the most valuable thing he owned wasn't
sitting in a checking account waiting to be counted. It existed inside the music. And assigning a precise value to songs is one of the most debated topics in the entertainment business. So whenever you see a net worth estimate attached to his name, understand that the true engine behind his wealth may have been worth far more than the cash people typically focus on. At the center of it all sits the crown jewel, the catalog itself. Hundreds of songs, including diamond-certified and multi-platinum records that collectively generated billions of streams. Take Sicko Mode as an example. The song alone has accumulated billions of plays, and every stream sends a portion of revenue back to the people who own rights connected to the record. But what makes a producer at his level so valuable is the fact that the money comes from multiple directions at once. And understanding those revenue streams is essential if you want to understand the estate. First, there's the production fee. That's the upfront payment received for creating the beat and helping build the song. For a producer operating at Tay Keith's level and working with major stars, those fees were likely substantial. Then there are producer points, which give the producer a negotiated percentage of the earnings generated by the record. That means the money can continue flowing long after the song is released. On top of that, there are songwriting and publishing royalties. When a producer contributes to the musical composition itself, they often own part of the underlying song, not just the recording. That ownership can generate revenue through streams, covers, samples, sync licenses, and other uses across different forms of media. When you stack those revenue streams across hundreds of records, you begin to understand why this isn't simply income. It's a system designed to keep producing value over time. That brings us to publishing, which deserves special attention because it may be one of the strongest assets connected to the estate. Tay Keith held a publishing deal with Warner Chappell Music, one of the largest music publishing companies in the world. Publishing ownership is tied to the composition itself, the melodies, structures, and musical ideas that make up a song. As long as those compositions continue being used anywhere, they can continue generating revenue. Whether the song is streamed online, played on the radio, performed live, sampled by another artist, licensed for a film, featured in a television show, included in a video game, or used in a commercial, publishing rights can create additional payments for the rights holder. And here's what makes publishing so powerful. Unlike hype, publishing doesn't disappear when a song leaves the charts. A record released years ago can still generate publishing income long after its peak commercial moment. Songs from 2018 were still producing revenue in 2026, and many will continue doing so well beyond that. This is the quiet side of wealth building that most fans never think about. While everyone pays attention to chart positions and headlines, publishing keeps working in the background year after year. That's exactly how long-term generational wealth is often built. Then there's the business side of the story. In 2018, during the same breakout period that transformed his career, Tay Keith and his manager, Cambrian Strong, launched Dramatized Music Group. And honestly, this may have been one of the smartest decisions he ever made. It also connects directly to the media management education he invested in earlier. A producer who only accepts assignments is essentially working inside the industry, no matter how successful they become. But a producer who owns a company becomes part of the industry's ownership structure itself. Dramatized Music Group wasn't just a brand name. It created a framework for signing talent, developing artists, managing intellectual property, controlling masters, and building equity beyond Tay Keith's personal production work. That's a completely different level of business. It's the difference between being a highly paid worker and being the person who owns part of the operation. The company itself carries value,
and whatever assets it controls, contracts, recordings, talent relationships.
Intellectual property and future opportunities can contribute to the overall estate. In many ways, it multiplied the value of everything else he was building because he wasn't relying solely on his own labor anymore. He was creating systems capable of generating value on their own. Then come the classic wealth-building decisions that separate earners from investors. Reports suggest that Tay Keith began putting money into real estate and stock investments relatively early in his career. And that's significant because many people who experience sudden financial success spend heavily on things that lose value over time. The cars, the jewelry, and the lifestyle purchases may look impressive, but they don't always build lasting wealth. Real estate can appreciate, investments can compound, and putting money into assets designed to grow is one of the smartest ways to transform a successful run into something that lasts for decades. It shows he wasn't focused only on making money, he was focused on protecting it, growing it, and turning temporary success into something far more permanent. And that's a major reason there's a meaningful estate to discuss today. When you put all the pieces together, the catalog, the Warner Chappell publishing rights, dramatized music group, the real estate holdings, and the investments, you start to understand why estimates of his wealth land where they do, and why the true value of what he built may be much higher than the headline numbers suggest. Because the majority of this estate isn't sitting in cash, it's tied up in ownership. It's made up of assets that continue generating income whether Tay Keith was actively working or not. And that distinction is what makes the next part of this conversation so important. So what exactly could his family inherit? When a producer passes away, the catalog doesn't vanish. The ownership interests, publishing rights, producer royalties, and contractual earnings all become part of the estate and can be transferred to beneficiaries. That means in a very real sense, his family could remain connected to revenue generated by a catalog filled with diamond-certified and multi-platinum records. Just think about that for a moment. Every future stream of Sicko Mode, every play of Look Alive, every spin of Non-Stop, every time Before I Let Go gets played somewhere around the world. Every licensing deal, commercial placement, television appearance, film soundtrack, or future use of those records can continue producing income. And the remarkable thing is that music copyrights don't disappear after a few years. They can remain valuable for decades. We're talking about a stream of earnings that could outlive multiple generations, potentially providing financial support long into the future. Then there's the publishing income connected to Warner Chappell, which is often considered one of the most valuable and durable assets inside any music estate. It's the part of the business that quietly keeps paying long after the headlines fade and the charts move on. There's also the value connected to Dramatized Music Group, the company he helped build. Whatever ownership stakes, contracts, intellectual property, artist relationships, and catalog assets that company controls become part of the broader picture. Add in real estate holdings and investment portfolios, and you begin to see what generational wealth in music actually looks like. It's not the luxury cars people see online. It's not the jewelry. It's not the lifestyle. It's ownership. It's holding the rights to something the world continues consuming over and over again. That's what transforms success into legacy. And honestly, that's the part that feels different now. Tay Keith built the less visible kind of wealth. He wasn't always the face on the stage. He was often the architect behind the scenes. And there's a level of strategic brilliance in that position that doesn't always get enough attention. For many artists, earning power depends on staying famous, staying relevant, staying visible, touring constantly, and continuously feeding public demand. The moment the spotlight shifts, the income can shift with it. But a producer's catalog doesn't care who's trending this week. The songs keep getting streamed anyway. The royalties keep arriving anyway. In fact, catalogs built around proven, timeless records often become more valuable as the years pass. That's one reason why major catalog acquisitions have become such a massive business. Buyers are willing to pay huge premiums for songs with a long track record of dependable earnings. They want proven assets. They want music that continues generating revenue year after year. And that's exactly the type of property Tay Keith spent years building. These aren't assets that necessarily lose value over time. In many cases, they become even more attractive as their earning history grows. And now those assets remain part of the legacy he leaves behind. What's especially remarkable is that a kid from South Memphis, raised by hard-working parents who emphasized education and discipline, figured out something many people never fully understand. The real victory isn't simply making money, it's owning what creates the money. He didn't just produce hit records, collect checks, and move on.
He positioned himself to maintain ownership interests in the work. He built a company instead of relying entirely on production fees. He invested in assets designed to appreciate rather than assets designed only to impress. And he applied the lessons he learned through media management directly to his own career. That approach created a structure where his work could continue working even when he wasn't. And that's something many successful entertainers never managed to build. A lot of people earn tremendous amounts of money during their peak years, spend just as quickly, and end up with surprisingly little left once the momentum slows down. Tay Keith appeared focused on building the opposite, a system designed to continue producing value whether he was in the room or not. That's a powerful difference. So when you really bring this story full circle, it's not ultimately about whether the estate is worth $2 million, $5 million, $10 million, or something even greater once every asset is fully evaluated. That's the number people are debating online. But the deeper story sits underneath all of that. This is the story of someone who discovered a passion at 14 years old, taught himself a craft, helped shape the sound of an entire era, and turned that passion into a financial foundation built to last far beyond his own lifetime. His family doesn't only inherit memories, they inherit a body of work that continues living every day. The catalog keeps generating streams, the royalty payments continue arriving, the publishing rights continue creating value, the ownership remains intact. That's the true definition of legacy. Not simply money, but a system he spent years building that can continue supporting the people he cared about. And maybe the biggest lesson here goes beyond music. How many talented creators are producing incredible work right now, but giving away ownership in exchange for short-term opportunities? How many people are sacrificing long-term value for immediate rewards without realizing what they're leaving behind? Tay Keith's journey serves as both a blueprint and a warning. Master the craft, dedicate yourself to the work, but whenever possible, fight to own part of what you create. Because ownership is what transforms talent into legacy. Ownership is what turns a successful run into something that can benefit future generations. Rest in peace to Brehavius Chambers. The music he helped create will continue echoing through this era for years to come, and his influence is permanently woven into the sound of modern hip-hop. What do you think about the legacy he leaves behind? And what lessons can creators take from his story when it comes to building real wealth instead of simply chasing temporary success? Let me know in the comments below.